I discovered that my parents had left everything to my sister in their will, and that was the moment I decided to stop helping with their bills and extra expenses. Just 2 weeks later, my mom sent me a text saying the mortgage was due, no greeting, no small talk. I simply replied, "I've been sitting on this for a few months now, trying to process everything, but I think I'm finally ready to share this absolute hell with internet strangers. Fair warning, this is going to be a long one, so buckle up. Sorry for the wall of text in advance." To give you some background, I'm 34 years old and work as a project manager for a tech company in Seattle, earning a decent salary of around $115,000 a year. I've always been the responsible one in my family. My sister, who is 29, let's call her Sarah, has always been the golden child, despite being a complete mess. She's never held a job for more than a few months, constantly searching for herself, and has a knack for spending money on the most ridiculous things while living rent-free at our parents' house on and off for years. We're talking about expensive clothes, weekend trips to Las Vegas with her equally irresponsible friends, and the latest iPhone every year. You get the picture. My parents, Dad is 63 and Mom is 60, aren't wealthy by any means, but they own a nice house in the suburbs that they've had for 25 years, along with some modest retirement savings and a few other assets. Nothing extravagant, but enough that they should be comfortable in retirement if they're careful. Dad worked in management at a manufacturing plant until a few years ago, and Mom was an elementary school secretary who retired early due to some health issues, nothing serious, but enough that she used it as an excuse to stop working. Our family dynamic has always been complicated. Growing up, Sarah could do no wrong. She was the cute one, the social butterfly, the one who just needed a little extra help. Meanwhile, I was expected to excel at everything, be independent, and basically parent myself from about age 12. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the self-sufficiency I developed, but the double standard was always painfully obvious. Now, we live in the same metro area. I have a decent 2-bedroom apartment downtown that I share with my cat, Max, a big orange tabby who I adore. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I've worked hard to get where I am, putting myself through college while working full-time and steadily climbing the career ladder, no handouts, no shortcuts. Here's where things get messed up. For the past 5 to 6 years, I've been helping my parents financially a lot. When Dad got laid off from his management position at the manufacturing plant back in 2019, I covered their mortgage payments for 11 months, not just a portion, but the entire amount, because they're my parents, and I didn't want them to lose their house. That was over $15,000 out of my pocket. When Mom's car broke down last year, I paid the $2,800 repair bill without hesitation. I've also been covering their cell phone bills, which are about $180 per month, for the past 3 years because they got caught in a predatory contract. Oh, and I've been sending them about $500 a month for groceries and utilities for God knows how long. Again, not loans, just helping out family. I skipped vacations, put off buying new work clothes, and even delayed getting some dental work done so I could help them. I was living on ramen some weeks so they could maintain their comfortable lifestyle. I never complained because, well, they're my parents. That's what a good son does, right? Meanwhile, my sister Sarah has contributed absolutely nothing. Unless you count the time she borrowed Dad's credit card to buy herself a $1,200 designer bag for her birthday. She claimed it was a mistake but somehow never paid it back. The girl has never contributed a single cent to the household expenses. Instead, she's constantly asking them and me for money for rent when she decides to move out for a few months before inevitably crawling back when she can't manage on her own. Last Christmas was a perfect example of the dynamic. I bought them practical gifts, a new coffee maker for the kitchen, gift cards for their favorite restaurants, and I even paid their property taxes as a big gift, another $3,200. Sarah? She gave them homemade coupons for quality time and a framed selfie of herself. Mom cried and said it was the most thoughtful gift ever. I'm not bitter or anything, okay, maybe a little. Even with all this, I never expected anything in return. Well, maybe some basic appreciation or acknowledgement, but definitely not any kind of inheritance or payback. They're my parents, I was helping because I loved them, and the worst part is that I defended them to my friends who said they were taking advantage of me. I would always say they would do the same for me. What a joke. Phil, did you find those tax forms yet? Mom called from the kitchen, where she was making dinner, acting like everything was normal, like she hadn't just stabbed me in the back. I walked into the kitchen with the will in my hand. "Care to explain this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom turned around, and I swear to God, her face didn't even register surprise, just a flicker if he found out before she went into full manipulation mode. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and said, "Oh, that's nothing you need to worry about right now." "Nothing I need to worry about?" I laughed, one of those ugly laughs that comes out when you're too shocked to cry. "Nothing? I'm literally written out of your will, and apparently, I've been taking money from you. When exactly did that happen?" Mom had the audacity to look annoyed, like I was making a scene over nothing. "Phil, your sister needs a future. She hasn't been as fortunate as you." "Fortunate?" I repeated, my voice rising. "I've worked 60-hour weeks for years to get where I am. I paid off my student loans while helping you with your bills. I drive a 10-year-old Toyota while Sarah is on her third leased luxury car that she can't afford. But sure, I'm just fortunate." "Fortunate," I repeated, my voice rising. "I made my fortune, Mom. Every cent I have, I earned, and a good chunk of it has gone to you and Dad over the years." She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't exaggerate, Philip. We've had some rough patches, and you've been generous." "Generous?" I cut her off. "I've given you tens of thousands of dollars. I paid your mortgage for almost a year. I've been paying your phone bill for 3 years. And we're very grateful," she said in that condescending tone she uses when she thinks I'm being unreasonable. "But Sarah isn't established like you are. She needs security." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And what about my security? What about all the money I could have saved or invested if I wasn't supporting you guys?" Then, as if on cue, Sarah strolled in with her usual perfect timing. She tossed her keys on the counter, keys to the car that I was pretty sure Mom and Dad co-signed for, and looked between us with this fake confused expression. "Hey, what's with all the yelling?" she asked, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. She was wearing new designer sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment had been. I held up the will. "Did you know about this?" That's when I saw it, the little smirk she couldn't quite hide, the same smirk she'd had since we were kids whenever she got her way. She knew. Of course, she knew. "Man, don't be so dramatic," she said with an eye roll. "It's just a will. You act like someone robbed you." I stepped closer to her, and I swear I've never been so close to completely losing my cool. "They did," I said, my voice deadly calm. Then I walked out. I could hear Mom calling after me as I got in my car, but I just cranked the music and drove away. I ended up at my buddy Mike's place. He's been my best friend since college and has heard me vent about my family dynamics for years. He took one look at my face, handed me a beer, and said, "Family sucks." I told him everything, finding the will, the confrontation, all of it. He wasn't even surprised. "Dude, I hate to say I told you so, and he was right. He'd been telling me for years that my parents were using me as an ATM while treating Sarah like royalty." I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed at my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every sacrifice I'd made for my family over the years. The vacations I didn't take so I could help them with bills, the emergency fund I drained so they wouldn't lose their house, the better apartment I could have had if I wasn't sending them $500 every month, all those times I told myself family is worth it. What an effing joke. My cat, Max, seemed to sense something was wrong. He actually slept on my chest that night instead of ignoring me like usual. At least someone in my life was loyal, even if it was just for the fancy feast. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Not expecting another cent from me. "You made your choice, now live with it." I turned and headed for the door, but my mother's voice followed me, sharp and accusatory. "Family takes care of each other, Phil." I stopped, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at her. "Then let Sarah take care of you." With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me so hard that the little decorative wreath she kept on it fell to the ground. Petty, but satisfying. I drove straight to my bank and removed them from every account where they were listed.
I canceled the automatic transfers I'd set up for their grocery money.
I called my phone carrier and removed their lines from my plan. It took about 2 hours to completely financially separate myself from them, and with each step, I felt lighter. That night, I had dinner with my friend Emily, who has basically been my emotional support human through all my family drama over the years.
She'd been telling me to cut them off financially for ages.
When I told her what happened and what I'd done, she literally cheered in the middle of the restaurant. "It's about damn time," she said, raising her glass in a toast to freedom from family hell. Days passed, and the silence from my parents was deafening. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive email from Mom. I half expected them to show up at my apartment with some half-ass apology or explanation, but nothing. Looking back, I should have realized that the silence wasn't because they were respecting my boundaries, it was because they were figuring out their next move.
Then one evening, I received a bank notification on my phone.
Someone had tried to withdraw $2,500 from a joint account I'd forgotten even existed. It was an emergency account I'd set up years ago when Dad first got laid off.
I'd added them as account holders so they could access funds if needed while I was covering their mortgage.
They were trying to take my money again. I immediately logged in and closed the account, transferring the remaining balance of about $3,800 to my personal savings. I had been so thorough with everything else, but somehow this account had slipped my mind. It was like they had a sixth sense for finding my financial blind spots.
Within minutes, my phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. "Phil," my father's voice was tight.
"Why did you close the account?
Why were you trying to take my money?"
I countered, "Why were you trying to take mine?" There was a long pause, then my mother's voice broke in, sugary sweet and coaxing.
"Sweetheart, we only needed a little help this month. You know how things are." "You mean ever since I stopped paying your bills?" I asked.
"You're being unreasonable," she snapped, the sweetness gone.
"You know we relied on you." I let out a bitter laugh.
"You should have thought about that before cutting me out of your will."
A deep silence followed. Then my father sighed. "Phil, don't be so dramatic.
We're still your parents, and Sarah is still your golden child.
Go ask her for help."
"You know she can't afford it," my mother said sharply.
"Not my problem," I ended the call.
Minutes later, a text came in from Sarah, "Grow up, Phil.
Family takes care of each other."
I stared at the screen before typing a reply, "Exactly. So take care of Mom and Dad." I blocked her number and leaned back in my chair, exhaling deeply.
Let them figure it out. I was done.
The next few weeks were weird. I kept expecting to feel guilty, but mostly I just felt relieved. I started doing things for myself that I'd been putting off for years.
I finally upgraded my ancient laptop. I booked a weekend trip to Vancouver just because I could.
I even started putting serious money into my retirement account instead of sending it to my parents. It was like I'd been carrying this massive weight for so long that I didn't even realize how heavy it was until I put it down. I slept better, stress ate less, hell, I even started going to the gym regularly for the first time in years, all because I wasn't constantly worried about my parents' financial emergencies. Of course, it couldn't last forever. A week of silence passed before I received an unexpected message from my mother. "Can we have dinner, just us? No pressure, let's talk." I should have ignored it. I should have known better. But part of me, some small stupid part, wanted to believe she had come to her senses, that maybe, just maybe, there was some regret. So I agreed. The restaurant was one of their favorites, a place I had often paid for in the past. As I stepped inside, my mother's face lit up with going to lose everything. I stared at the notification, my thumb hovering over the screen. The manipulation was almost laughable, first the mortgage, now a sudden illness.
How convenient.
Then another message came through, this time a bank transfer request for the exact amount, no explanation, just the demand.
I exhaled slowly, shaking my head.
This was who they were, who they had always been.
Without hesitation, I typed my final response, "Call Sarah."
Then, with a sharp flick of my finger, I blocked their numbers. A suffocating weight lifted from my chest, one I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying.
For the first time in years, I felt free. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but family drama never really ends cleanly, does it?
They found ways to contact me, through work, through old friends, even showing up at my apartment once. Each time, it was the same story: they needed money, Dad was sick, he wasn't, they were going to lose the house, they weren't.
Each time, I refused.
After the apartment incident, which ended with me threatening to call security, I sent a group email to my extended family explaining my side of the story. I included screenshots of bank transfers showing how much I'd given them over the years, plus a photo of the will section that cut me out. I wasn't trying to get anyone to pick sides, but I wanted the truth out there before my parents could spin their own version. The response was mixed. Some relatives were shocked and supportive, others thought I should be the bigger person and help anyway because they're still your parents. My grandmother actually called me in tears, saying she had no idea they'd been treating me that way. She'd always thought Sarah and I were treated equally. Spoiler alert, we weren't. My cousin Jake, who's about my age and has always been cool, texted me, "Dude, I've watched them favor her for 30 years.
Good for you for finally standing up for yourself.
It's been about 3 months now since I found that will.
I've had a lot of time to think about everything.
There's still this part of me that feels guilty sometimes. They raised me, after all. But then I remember how they lied, how they manipulated me for years, and the guilt fades. Last week, I heard through a mutual friend that they had to take out a second mortgage on the house. Apparently, Sarah finally moved out with a loan from them for the security deposit, of course, and they're struggling without my financial support. Part of me feels vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad that it had to come to this, sad that money meant more to them than our relationship.
But I've also started therapy.
I should have done this years ago, and I'm learning to set boundaries.
I've even started dating again after a long hiatus. Turns out, not sending my parents thousands of dollars every month has really improved my quality of life. Who knew? I've started using some of that money to actually enjoy my life.
Last month, I went on my first real vacation in 5 years, a week in Hawaii where I learned to surf and got a wicked sunburn, but had the time of my life. I'm saving for a down payment on a condo, and I bought Max a ridiculously expensive cat tree that he loves.
Small things, but they make me happy.
Sarah says I seem like a different person, more relaxed, more confident. I didn't realize how much their constant demands had been dragging me down until they stopped.
It's like I can finally breathe again.
Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever acknowledge what they did, if they'll ever truly understand how much they hurt me.
Probably not.
My therapist says some people are incapable of that kind of self-reflection. She's helping me accept that I might never get the apology or recognition I deserve from them. As for Sarah, last I heard, she'd moved in with some new boyfriend and was starting a business, probably another MLM scheme. Part of me hopes she grows up someday, but I'm not holding my breath.
So that's where I stand now.
I still haven't changed my number, just in case there's ever an emergency, but I've made it clear that I'm done being their ATM. Honestly, it feels pretty damn good. TLDR, after years of financially supporting my parents, I found out they cut me out of their will while leaving everything to my deadbeat sister. I stopped paying their bills, they're now struggling, and I'm finally living my own life.
Edit, wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the support and awards.
To answer some common questions, yes, I've considered changing my will too, just in case something happens to me.
Meeting with a lawyer next week.
No, I don't hate my sister.
I'm angry at her.